Please join me in welcoming Leo Marmol to the stage again.
Thank you, Sydney. And what she didn't mention is, of the 20 people that were here, 10 of them were from our own office. So thank you, Sydney, for remembering where we've come from. Thank you to Palm Springs Art Museum. Thank you for Modernism Week. Thank you for your collaboration for this community, and we are so grateful to that. But most of all, thank you all for coming today. So every year, Palm Springs beckons lovers of modernism from around the world to congregate in this wonderful little oasis to celebrate the cultural, artistic, and intellectual achievements of modern architecture. Modernism encompasses numerous fields, including literature, visual arts, architecture, music, philosophy. Modernism is characterized by a rejection of traditional conventions and a desire to explore new forms of expression. Through the lens of modernism, we now seek to understand and interpret the complexities of this odd technological age that we're all now living through. Modernism encourages experimentation, abstraction, and a focus on inner experiences of individuals, leading to a wide range of diverse and avant-garde works across different disciplines. Now, there are countless examples of powerful modern works right here in Palm Springs, but today we're here to dive into the profound social and aesthetic impacts of the Aluminaire House. Designed by architects Albert Frey and A. Lawrence Kocher, the Aluminaire House was a harbinger of U.S. modernism, embodying a futuristic way of living that captured people's imaginations in the 1930s. My goal for today is to show all of you why the Aluminaire House holds such immense historical significance as a pioneering example of European modernism here in America. So let's outline the history of the house, from its beginnings in New York to its future and final home here at the Palm Springs Art Museum. The museum's installation of the Aluminaire House will be completed in January of 2024. The unveiling of the house will coincide with a major retrospective of Albert Frey's work and life curated by Brad Dunning. Titled Inventive Modernism, the exhibition will open at the Architecture and Design Center, Edward Harris Pavilion, on January 13th and be on view through June 3rd of next year. The exhibition will showcase many rare, previously unexhibited architectural models, drawings, films, photographs, and so much more. You definitely don't want to miss that. Now, as one of Albert Frey's earliest projects in the US, the Aluminaire House represents a young architect's literal interpretation of the modernist principles outlined by Le Corbusier, who is widely recognized as the parent of modern architecture. Frey and Kocher conceived of the Aluminaire House as a prototype for creating low-cost, prefabricated housing that would employ the core tenets of modern design. The structure was assembled in 10 days from donated American-made materials. It was initially part of the New York Architectural and Allied Arts Exhibition in 1931. As the first major exhibition of European modernism on US soil, the Aluminaire House literally transported the philosophy of the European modernist movement across the Atlantic. Raised above the ground on slender columns, the Aluminaire House is a one-bedroom home designed to maximize efficiency for healthy living. The primary structure of the house is aluminum, supported by lightweight steel floor decks. Richard Neutra's Lovell Health House is another important example of early modernism in the US, created prior to the Aluminaire House in 1927. Neutra was forced to build the house himself because no residential general contractors were willing to construct the steel-framed home due to the industry's unfamiliarity and outright distaste for industrial materials being employed for residential work. Remarkably compact, the Aluminaire House is a mere 1,100 square feet across 3 stories, excluding the terrace and the garage. The house's luminous, airy appearance is a credit to the dialogue between aluminum and steel, working to prove the viability of industrial materials in creating housing. The 4 metallic elevations of the structure are interspaced with broad glass windows to facilitate a visual relationship between those living in the house and any environment in which the house was placed. As a prototype for mass-produced housing, part of what makes the Aluminaire House unique is that it has no designated site. It was designed to be at home anywhere. It was never Frey and Kocher's intention for the house to be lived in full-time. It was first and foremost intended to represent an idea or model for a new way of living. Although the New York Architectural and Allied Arts exhibition lasted only 8 days, it was estimated that more than 100,000 people visited the house. The house was also widely discussed in the popular and architectural press as the house of the future. The Aluminaire House's enduring legacy is in no small part credited to A. Lawrence Kocher, whose media connections were instrumental in building the house's lore. In their partnership, Frey was regarded as the designer, while Kocher embodied the role of the front man. Kocher was an architect by trade, but was best known as the managing editor of Architectural Record from 1927 to 1938. It was Kocher's mission to shift Architectural Record's focus from historic European-styled architecture to modern building methods and designs. Kocher used his opportunities exhibiting at the exhibition to further that agenda. While Frey worked tirelessly over the details, Kocher promoted the modern movement in broad marketing strokes, and Kocher's media connections very much paid off. The Aluminaire House was one of only 2 American houses chosen by Henry Russell Hitchcock and Philip Johnson to be included in their seminal international exhibition of modern architecture held at the Museum of Modern Art in 1932. The other inclusion, the other American inclusion, was Richard Neutra's Lovell Health House. The exhibition included the publication of a catalog and the resulting book entitled The International Style, Architecture Since 1922, giving birth to the term the International Style. Since its successful unveiling, the Aluminaire House has embarked on a journey spanning nearly a century. After the initial exhibition, the house was disassembled and moved to various locations, embodying the concept of portability and adaptability that modern architects championed. Historically, the house has occupied 4 locations. Following the initial exhibition, the structure was purchased by architect Wallace K. Harrison and relocated to his property in Long Island. Harrison intended to use the house as a family dwelling and quickly began several alterations and additions that diverged from the home's initial vision. By the 1940s, Harrison and his family had vacated the house. They relocated the structure once again, moving the building elsewhere on the property to be used as a guest house. While it stood as a symbol of modernist design and garnered recognition for its historical importance, the house fell into disrepair and in some ways lost touch with its original function as an exhibition object. It is an incredibly efficient vision of modern living, but at its core, it's a prototype designed for display and critical dialogue. In 1986, the Aluminaire House, after a number of owners, was threatened again with demolition as the site it occupied faced redevelopment. Thanks to the efforts of architects Michael Schwarting and Francis Campani, its historical significance and architectural importance were recognized, sparking a passionate preservation effort led by architects and preservation enthusiasts. Paul Goldberger published a piece in the New York Times on March 8, 1987, as a call to action from the preservation community. The New York Institute of Technology sponsored an emergency project to salvage the building. It was dismantled once again, the components documented, and the materials were relocated to the New York Institute of Technology campus at Central Islip. The New York Institute of Technology students were engaged in re-erecting the steel and aluminum building frame where it lived from 1989 to 1991. When the New York Institute of Technology Central Islip campus closed in 2004, the Aluminaire House faced an uncertain future. Michael Schwarting and Francis Campani again jumped into action to protect the artifact. Michael and Francis founded the Aluminaire Foundation, which disassembled the house, storing its components until a permanent site for the structure could be secured. In 2014, Michael and Francis presented the home at Palm Springs Modernism Week, introducing the Aluminaire House to our local modernist fanatics. Yep, you know who you are. Soon, a committee was formed to bring the house to Palm Springs permanently. The committee included Tracy Conrad, Mark Davis, William Kopelk, Beth Edwards-Harris, and Brad Dunning, with several other instrumental individuals. Multiple locations across Palm Springs were considered before the museum expressed interest. In 2020, the Aluminaire House Foundation officially gifted the house to the Palm Springs Art Museum, which, as you know, also holds Frey House 2, as well as Albert Frey's architectural archive. Typically, landmarks like the Aluminaire House have a singular site, whereas this house has occupied multiple sites and was wholly disassembled at the time of the acquisition by the museum. So we have to ask, why should a museum accept an old pile of house parts into its permanent art collection? How do we understand the notion of significance with something so transitory? How can the Aluminaire House be historically significant when it's nothing but a kit of parts? At the risk of being overly nerdy, and I will tell you my kids constantly remind me of what a nerd I truly am. That's the joy of children. Let's review the 4 standards outlined by the Secretary of the Interior for the treatment of historic properties. Forgive me for this. There is an ideological perspective within the preservation community that defines authenticity as necessitating the preservation of the structure's original material, often referred to as the historic fabric. Fortunately, the Aluminaire House represents a rare case in that most materials used in the current reconstruction are in fact the original components from the installation in 1931. Yet, preservation architects need to struggle with making old artifacts useful within current building codes and contemporary standards of building performance. This dichotomy, this struggle between historic fabric and new construction is well represented in the Ship of Theseus paradox, which poses philosophical questions regarding an object's identity over time. The thought experiment posits a scenario in which all the parts of a ship are replaced gradually, one piece at a time.
and then poses this question: is the vessel that exists after all the replacement parts are installed the same ship as the one that existed before the replacements? Can the Richard Neutra designed Kaufmann House be considered historically significant or authentic, even though a majority of the original historic fabric had been removed prior to the home's preservation? Is the ship of the desert historically significant, even though most of the historic fabric had been lost to fire? Well, the Aluminaire House is not that ship, but also does not neatly adhere to any one of the categories outlined by the Secretary of the Interiors. Rather, the Aluminaire House project encompasses a combination of several standards, if not all of them. It is certainly a preservation project because we are reinstalling most of the structure's original materials, and also rehabilitation because we are updating aspects of the structure to meet contemporary construction demands, like how do you make a big metal box survive in direct desert sun? One could even argue that the Aluminaire House reinstallation can be considered restoration due to the measures we've taken to repair a number of the existing materials, as well as finish the house more thoroughly than it was originally. Adding such things as, waterproofing, since the original installation was inside an exhibition hall. It is also certainly reconstruction, due to the fact that the house is quite literally being reassembled. This project is an incredibly authentic installation of a historic artifact. We rarely have a vestige of this age with so much original fabric remaining. And that's really a credit to Michael and Francis's commitment to preserving the house. The care they took to package and catalog the many components for safekeeping is the only reason the house is here today. So, before continuing the house's present-day journey, let's dive a bit more into the purpose of its historic design. The idea of the house was simple: to create a functional object that acted as a rallying cry for exciting new materials and futuristic possibilities, shepherded by the rapid expansion of industrialization in the US and the romantic notion of European modern living. Modernism and industrialization existed in a feedback loop. Each encouraged the growth of the other. As industrially manufactured materials became more available, modernism's functional designs became more viable. And as modern designs gained popularity, the need for manufactured materials increased. Frey and Kocher were commissioned to design a structure from materials donated by several prominent American manufacturing companies. The house was a tool to exemplify the possibilities of combining European modern design ideals with American manufacturing capabilities. The exhibition was a precursor to John Intenza's case study house program in Los Angeles in the 1940s to the 1960s, which also called upon prominent architects to design houses that could promote a modern lifestyle and innovative construction techniques. A core emphasis of modernism is experimentation and the use of new, inventive techniques. Aluminum was used in the construction industry in the early 1900s. However, this material truly hit its stride in the 1920s when the electrolysis process reduced the cost of producing aluminum by a staggering 80%. The Empire State Building is cited as one of the earliest buildings to use aluminum for its construction. The building was completed in just over 365 days, shorter than it takes to get a building permit. And that was the same year as the Aluminaire House, 1931. It was the durability and flexibility of aluminum that allowed both the Empire State Building and the Aluminaire House to be constructed so efficiently. This was truly cutting-edge technology at that time. To garner support for the project, Frey made a scale model of the house to show manufacturing companies like Alcoa, J.W. Fisk Iron Works, Jones and Laughlin Steel Works, and Pittsburgh Plate Glass, amongst others. These companies produced the prefabricated parts and materials in exchange for publicity of their support for the project. This allowed these companies to broadcast the utility and convenience of their latest innovations and encourage prefabricated housing. These companies also had a financial interest in extending the use of industrial materials. Alcoa, which stands for the Aluminum Company of America, made the first contributions, providing columns, beams, girders, and siding panels. Alcoa continues to be a leading manufacturer of aluminum today. The Aluminaire House is named for its groundbreaking use of aluminum as a primary building material. The term luminaire describes the construction around a light source. The combination of these two words, aluminum and luminaire, feels incredibly poetic and appropriate. Aluminum was inexpensive, plentiful, and certainly creative. With the expectation, this new material literally sparkled with modernism's promise. The home Frey and Kocher designed illustrated how a small house could be industrially produced using prefabricated materials as a means to provide cost-efficient housing for the middle class, thereby introducing the concept of modern living in association with European socialism. The goal was to provide efficient, safe, beautiful housing for everybody. Frey himself had long been fascinated with America's evolving design and manufacturing possibilities. While he worked with Le Corbusier in the late 1920s, Frey discovered a copy of the Sweets catalog. The Sweets catalog was an American periodical filled with hundreds of manufacturers advertising their factory-produced goods and products available to order. Frey was amazed at what was available for purchase in these catalogs. At that time, all facets of construction had to be custom produced. Things like doors, windows, and hardware were not ready to buy off a shelf at the local hardware store, nor were most materials from the Sweets catalog available to order outside of the U.S. Also available to order in the U.S. was the purchase of an entire home through a catalog. Now, this is a side note. We're going to talk in a bit about the Villa Savoye, but I love these images of the interior of Villa Savoye. Viruses were initially discovered in the 1890s. So wouldn't it make sense to include a sink at the front entry to wash one's hands upon arrival? We really have so much to learn from history. For modern architecture, with its emphasis on efficiency in all aspects of design and construction, the availability of prefabricated materials was revolutionary. The power of mass production and prefabrication continues to resonate in today's architectural conversation. Marmol Radziner has completed many prefabricated projects that continue the legacy and spirit of that design ideology. The dream of prefabrication is to allow architects to design and build structures more efficiently. Prefabrication actually dates back to the early 1600s, when panelized wood houses were shipped from England to Cape Ann, Massachusetts. Prefabrication was then popularized by the assembly lines of Henry Ford's car factories, and at the same time, the Sears catalog was selling its own version of a prefabricated house. Disciples of Le Corbusier dreamed of an urban utopia full of mass-produced, prefabricated housing designed in a modern style. And Albert Frey came to America with that sensibility in mind. The Aluminaire House embodies the definition of modern design, as defined by Le Corbusier's 5 points. From his legendary treatise, Towards a New Architecture, developed in the 1920s, Le Corbusier's 5 points of modern architecture are a set of architectural ideologies and classifications that are rationalized across, we got to switch to this one, across 5 key components. Peloti, or these columns that raise the structure, liberating it from the tyranny of the ground plane and freeing the plan. The plan then becomes something that can float between the structural elements. The facade of the building itself can also be liberated from structure and therefore be adorned with strip windows that then better connect the interior space to the exterior space. The roof terrace was seen as an opportunity to, again, connect to the exterior, but bring that ground plane up to the upper areas of the living experience. So Le Corbusier's entire philosophy was founded on the idea that these 5 elements could be rearranged to construct an infinite number of uniquely modern combinations. The Aluminaire House follows these elements to a T. The house literally embodies Le Corbusier's 5 points. Some might say too literally. We have to remind ourselves that Frey was still a very young architect in 1930 when he designed the Aluminaire House. There is no question that the design reflects a naive exuberance for the ideas of his mentor. Le Corbusier received as much criticism as praise for his idea, but their longevity speaks for itself. Even traditional houses today exemplify some of the 5 principles that Le Corbusier wrote about in the 1920s. One lingering component is the open floor plan, the idea of the great room, where the kitchen, living room, and dining room are all one seamless experience. That's a modern idea born of the Industrial Revolution, which allowed us to have more openness by liberating the need for restrictive structural spans between the walls or columns. Consider the remarkable range of modern architectural achievements that embody Corbu's core principles while showcasing distinct aesthetic variations. The Villa Savoye, completed in 1931, same year as the Aluminaire House, in France, is often regarded as Europe's counterpoint to the Aluminaire House, or the other way around. Designed by Le Corbusier and Pierre Jeanneret, the iconic structure also benefited from Albert Frey's contributions. Villa Savoye stands as a hallmark of modern architecture, epitomizing the international style. The house was envisioned as a luxurious country retreat for the Savoye family, seamlessly integrating with the lush countryside, showcasing a flawless entanglement of modern design and nature. The Villa Savoye utilized reinforced concrete, enabling structural, sculptural forms, and extensive use of glass and transparency for natural light. The Villa Savoye is larger and more elaborate than the Aluminaire House, which is smaller and more modest, prioritizing efficient design solutions for affordable, space-saving housing. Both the Villa Savoye and the Aluminaire House act as fine art objects gently placed onto the landscape. They do not directly interact with the environment in the way that Frey House 2 does, a structure that is built into a mountain, not onto a mountain, to the point where the rock literally juts into the living space. The Aluminaire House's intention is to be so adaptable, raises questions about whether designing context-independent buildings is advantageous, or does it lead to monotonous repetition, lacking social context? This notion of sightless design invokes associations with rampant capitalism and corporate standardization, celebrated by Ayn Rand's economic philosophy, akin to McDonald's iconic golden arches that dot the world. While efficient commercially, standardization sidesteps the broader social and aesthetic principles of the modern movement by neglecting local context and the design nuances that come with it. The Aluminaire House embodies modern ideals in aesthetics and technology, while aligning with the Bauhaus principle of design and function, supporting a broader social philosophy. The modern goal was to minimize the use of precious natural resources while maximizing their value, embracing the idea that less is somehow more. One key marketing effort, one key event marking the start of the modern movement was the publication of the Proclamation of the Bauhaus by German architect Walter Gropius. This outlined the Bauhaus school's principles, serving as a manifesto. Gropius envisioned a utopia where architecture, sculpture, and painting were unified as a single creative expression. The manifesto, published in 1919, rallied the Bauhaus movement, setting forth a vision for artistic collaboration and innovation. Gropius founded the school in 1919, uniting artists, craftspeople, and architects to explore creative potential across disciplines. Seeking to bridge art, craft, and technology, the school's interdisciplinary curriculum focused on functional design taught by practicing artists, architects, and designers. These ideals are embodied in the Aluminaire House, which defies categorization as both a building and a fine art object. This unity of all artistic endeavors sought a seamless integration of artistic expression and practical functionality to enhance daily life. Central to the Bauhaus philosophy was that form follows function, defining an object's design by its purpose, not just ornamentation or artistic expression. This led to minimalist, streamlined aesthetics. The Bauhaus embraced new technologies and industrial materials, democratizing design through machinery and mass production. The Bauhaus aimed to make well-designed products accessible to a broader audience. The school of the Bauhaus, led by renowned figures like Wassily Kandinsky, Paul Klee, and Mies van der Rohe, became the modern movement's epicenter, fostering experimentation and collaboration. The school ultimately closed due to political pressure from the Nazi regime in 1933. Its legacy continued as teachers and students spread its principles worldwide. The Aluminaire House encapsulated the overarching social and cultural dreams of European modernism and the Bauhaus. More than a prototype for low-cost housing, the structure was a prototype for a new way of living centered around a modernist philosophy. The Bauhaus doctrine and style, with its emphasis on geometric forms and multidisciplinary process, became a reference point for the development of the international style, which profoundly affected the aesthetic language of the United States. The artists and architects from the Bauhaus emigrated to the US through New York, and many eventually ended up on the West Coast. Kocher himself helped arrange for Walter Gropius to emigrate to the US while Kocher was teaching at Black Mountain College, a holistic liberal arts college in Black Mountain, North Carolina. Albert Frey was born in Zurich, Switzerland, on October 18, 1903. Frey's life journey would take him across continents. Frey first went to France to work for Le Corbusier, then to New York to work with A. Lawrence Kocher, and finally to Palm Springs, where he spent most of his life. Frey's passion for design was evident from an early age, and he pursued his education at the Institute of Technology in Zurich. In 1928, Frey secured a position in the Paris atelier of Le Corbusier. Frey was one of only 2 full-time employees at that time. Both Frey and the Aluminaire House are pivotal examples of how modernist thought traversed the globe. The Aluminaire House's relationship with Palm Springs is entwined with Albert Frey, whose deep connection to the desert is a defining aspect of his life and work. Frey arrived in Palm Springs in 1934 at the request of A. Lawrence Kocher to collaborate on a structure for Kocher's brother. The Kocher Sampson Building was the first modern structure in Palm Springs. This marked the beginning of Albert Frey's love affair with the California desert. Frey briefly returned to New York in 1937 to contribute to the completion of the Museum of Modern Art, and then settled in Palm Springs permanently in 1939. Frey's letters to Le Corbusier reflect his passion for living amongst the desert's wildness, yet intellectually vibrant community. Frey's minimalistic style, marked by rugged materials and sublime colors, was in tune with the natural landscape of the desert. The growth of Palm Springs as a haven for the elite and Frey's collaborative nature aligned, contributing to the city's rise as a hub of modern architecture after World War II. Frey's design spectrum covered everything from custom homes to public structures, each reflecting his integration of modernist philosophy with American pragmatism. Frey's designs harmonized with the landscape and embraced the local environment's colors and metaphors to establish a new genre of modern architecture we now often refer to as California modernism, the softer, more humane, more connected variant of the international style. Frey built his second personal home literally into the mountain itself, fully committing to the philosophy of integrating architectural form with nature. The Aluminaire House stands as a symbol of the 28-year-old Albert Frey's visionary approach to architecture, epitomizing the principles of modernism and reflecting the modernist desire for prefabricated homes that fit anywhere. The Aluminaire House connects the present state of modern thought in Palm Springs to its origin nearly a century ago. By acquiring one of Frey's earliest works, the Palm Springs Art Museum honors his lasting impact on the architectural landscape. The home's innovative design, use of aluminum, and prefabrication, the process symbolize the convergence of European modernism and American ingenuity. In my conversations with Julius Schulman, we often discuss the paradox of modern buildings becoming more expensive despite using less material or techniques like prefabrication to make the production of buildings more efficient. Efforts like the case study program and the Aluminaire House, they strove to spark enough interest in modern design and mass-produced prefabrication, knowing that this was the only way to bring construction costs down and make the process more cost efficient. The dream of standardization and standardizing building systems persists, as seen in concepts like 3D printed houses and the continued cultural conversation around modular prefabrication techniques. The hope remains that mass-produced standardized systems will emerge someday to offer high design to the masses, reminiscent of the vision of Frey and Kocher. The Aluminaire House's century-long journey concludes with its installation here at the museum, where it will continue to invoke the majesty of modernism. As an exhibition object, the house can continue to nurture our conversations around modern architecture. To accommodate challenges posed by the Palm Springs desert environment, we've devised a number of updates. The building's skin was rethought to prevent water intrusion. A cooling system was added to protect the materials and ensure its endurance. Due to the small size of the house, it cannot accommodate disabled access, so the exhibition will not offer interior access. This is similar to the Eames House in Los Angeles, where you can only visit the exterior of the home. The Eames House, by the way, is also constructed from a prefabricated kit of parts. The Aluminaire House offers us an important opportunity to teach and debate the beauty and relevance of the modern ideal. Throughout its journey, the Aluminaire House has stood as a symbol of the innovative spirit of modernist architecture. Its unique design, the use of aluminum, and its pioneering approach to prefabrication left an enduring impact on the field of architecture. Soon to be available for public viewing for the first time in nearly 50 years. The house will continue to inspire architects, designers, and enthusiasts alike. I will say, seeing the house return to its original function as an exhibition of a modern ideal is an amazing celebration. Thank you.